guys, welcome to the Registeel Power Rankings for Season 4 of the HBF. So, first of all, the way I do Power Rankings here is a little different. I don't sit down and write a big spiel before taking a look at the teams. I take a look, sort of do it live with you. We will take a look at all the teams one by one, sort of a first look. Go through some positives, some negatives, and at the end I will give the teams a score out of 10. And then that at the end of the video, we will probably in post. I will order all those teams, go back, look at any that had the same score, and you'll get your final rankings. But yeah, so this is more of a first look, but we will get into some rankings at the end. We're just going to go in draft order, just because that's what I have the teams loaded up as. And we're going to start with Justin, and obviously getting round one pick with Delta Mellow Mime. Then we got Aegis/, Delta Registeel, Gliscor, Keldeo, Delta Tentacruel, Raichu, Regidraco, Articuno, Mega Girafarig, and Delta Dwebble Cake. So immediately, first thing I'm going to look into here is the speed tiers of the team. Taking a look, we have sort of a few mons here that are around that sort of 80 to 85 to 95 mark. I would have really loved maybe one of them to be a bit faster, because Raichu is probably not going to be coming to too many games, which leaves it Keldeo and Delta Mellow as your speed control. It's a little bit lackluster there, if I will say so. You probably like Delta Meloetta is a fantastic speed tier. It's got U-turn, it's got great cover. It's a broken mon. Yeah, so that's a fantastic speed tier, but it's just a little bit lackluster behind it. The other thing I notice is our physical attack is basically all on Mellow. Yes, we do have Aegis that can come in, and Regidraco can be physical, but yeah, it's a little bit more special leaning. As we have Articuno, we got not Articuno, we got Keldeo, we got Mega Girafarig. Aegis generally, just from my experience, I find it's run special or mixed a lot more than it is purely physical. But yeah, saying that, it's not too bad. It's got some really nice bulk. Like, you've got Delta Registeel, Gliscor, Delta Tentacruel, Articuno. They're all decent. They're all decently fat. Delta Registeel is a fantastic mon. It also gets Stealth Coals if you want to run Foundry. Another great way to break steel types for Meloetta. I think this team does that well. Between Registeel, like Aegis breaks them fairly well. And Gliscor. Also Keldeo. So yeah, it's really built around breaking for Delta Meloetta, which I think is a great way to go about your team. In terms of the hazard game, like, only 2 rockers, but we have one of the more reliable ones, and you can run Stealth Coals there. I think it's not too bad. Gliscor might be a bit pressured to come sort of a more defensive mon this season, considering it is also one of the only 2 defoggers on the team. And Articuno is, again, same with Raichu, it's one of those sort of mid to low picks. It's not coming a whole lot, considering you probably want Mellow, Aegis Registeel, and then like at least one of Keldeo, Gliscor most games. So, and then you've got Mega Girafarig, which is really good mon. So it's fitting it might be a bit tough. Yeah, so it's the hazard game's D's. I would have loved one more remover, just to like something that's just reliable. That, like, yes, Articuno is very reliable when it comes. It probably wants to run defog, but I'd love maybe one more just to balance that out. Looking at our pivots, we got Articuno, Gliscor, Raichu, Keldeo, Mellow, and then Girafarig. So it's some nice pivoting. I think it's, considering the way the team's built, I think that's adequate pivoting. The one thing I will say is, looking at this team, it's a little bit Scald weak, or like is strong water move weak, because Keldeo, yes, it's a resist, but it's not the bulkiest, and you don't really want to be running like defensive Keldeo ever. So it's really relying on Delta Tentacruel Storm Drain. So yeah, water types with coverage for Tentacruel could pose a problem to this team. Again, Regidraco is a resist, but just look at this. That's not resisting. So yeah, also one thing I will point out, Delta Dwebble Cake. This mon is not to be slept on. it is faster than regular. It is faster than what's the mon? The big Crustle. That's what it evolves into. And even though it's base 65 attack, at Adamant, when it Shell Smashes with Simple, it still hits 753 attack, which is bonkers. This mon will not be 1 point next season. That's definitely a tiering oversight. But yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, I think it's a solid team. It's a solid sort of like benchmark team. It's built very well around Delta Meloetta, and I see if this team does well, I see Delta Melo getting a lot of kills. Maybe we get some sort of Season 1 Registeel action back. But I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 just because those speed tiers, that hazard game, and the lack of another, like, maybe one more offensive one I would have liked, sort of holding it back. So we're going to go down. We got DJ now. We got DJ with a round 1 Shandy. We got Shandy, Corviknight, Zera, Dragalge, Serena, Slowking, Delta Reuniclus, Miltank, Sork, and Delta Lucario Mega. This team, off the bat, looks very scary. We're going to start in the same spot that we did with Justin. We're going to start at the speed tiers. Now, one thing I will say, you look at this, we have 2 Mons over 110 on both teams, but looking at the caliber of the 2 Mons, we have Zeraora and Mega Delta Lucario, 2 Mons that are really going to want to come to almost every game. Like Delta Mega Luke with that Defiant, these nutty offensive stats. Yes, it doesn't get whatever the adaptability is, that what Mega Lucario gets? I can't remember. But it's still like 140 and 145 in its offenses. So it's still very scary. Zera is a great mon. I'm a big Zera fan. I think it can come to every matchup without fail. There is always something that you can find Zeraora to do. So I think these speed tiers are a little bit more reliable. You also have an interesting little Trick Room core, like you got Slowking here, you got Dragalge under Trick Room. I haven't seen too much of it in singles, mainly because singles Trick Room is bad. But I do remember playing some VGC and Dragalge with the adaptability with like a Draco Plate or a Specs or something, or like a Life Orb, can really hit hard than you think it would, because 97 isn't special attack isn't a slouch at, especially when it's adaptability. Sludge Wave Dracos, it's really nice coverage. Delta Reuniclus, similar sort of thing. I really like there's a bit of defensive synergy here, like Corviknight, Slowking, both weak to electric, but then you have the 2 immunities in 2 mons that are going to be coming most weeks, and us resist and Dragalge. I think it works out. Delta Shandy is one of those mons that you want to get in as often as possible, because it clicks a button and something dies. You've got either Fairy or, like, let's go through the types that resist. Resist Chandelure's Fairy Aura Boosted Moonblast, which is a set that's probably going to be coming. We've got Poison, we've got Steel, and we got Fire. So Fire types are really probably going to be the way that you want to resist Delta Chandelure, because it resists both stabs. But then, so that's probably, but then you got Delta Mega Lucario. You got Slowking, so Fire types aren't too much of an issue. Looking at our pivoting, which is how we get Mega Luke and Shandian, we've got Serena, we've got Corviknight, Zera, Slowking, and Dragalge. When 5 out of your 10 mons can pivot, I think it's really nice to have. So yeah, this team looks very well balanced. Looking at its removal, only 2 removers, but 2 very reliable movers. Like, I would be absolutely shocked if there was a game that Corviknight or Serena, that both of them didn't come to this season. They're very reliable. One thing I will say is, it's a little bit weak on the physical defense. Just trying to figure out how to word that. Like, yes, Corviknight is very bulky. Yes, Miltank is very bulky, but I would have loved just some that, with the power creep in Insurgents, especially some of these like offensive mons, like you look up here at this Delta Mellow Mime, and a few mons that we're going to see later, like Mega Delta Lucario. These attack stats are making these bulky mons that, if you're not a resist, or if they don't have coverage, if they have coverage for you, it's a little bit harder to get sort of get reliable reliable checks going. But in saying that, I think it's a really nice, well-rounded team. I think it's a little bit more well-rounded than Justin's, so I'm going to give this a 7.5. out of 10. We didn't talk about the rockers. Miltank's really reliable. Dragalge's nice with T-Spikes, and Delta Reuni is okay. Mega Delta Lucario is not really running rocks. It gets way too much coverage, way too many setup options. There's something more that you're going to be wanting to run every week. So Hazard Game probably lets it down a bit. And yeah, otherwise I think it's a really nice, well-rounded team. Looking next, we have Steering. He's got Mega Milotic, Lando T, Weavile, Victini, Delta Sceptile, Licky, Armaldo, Delta Lilligant Water, Rotomo, and Registeel. First things first, the damn Delta Sceptile. I want that mon. I wanted it on my player, and it sniped like 2 picks before me, and that was very sad. That mon is very good. But we will take a look at the speed tiers, and looking at it, I understand why you needed it. 2 mons at 120 and 125. Then it's down to Victini and Lando and the rest. Speed tiers are good, not great. They're good because you've got 2 mons that are well over 110, which is sort of the benchmark you want to hit, and because you've got 2 really good Scarfers here. They're not amazing because it's just there's a really big gap here, like from 120 to 100. Yeah, it's not the greatest. One thing I will do really quick. What ability is Storm Drain, Regen, Flash Fire? Okay, Delta Lilligant Water is better than I gave it credit for originally. So yeah, looking at this team, Mega Milo pick 1. That thing just sits, and it sits for a long time. The way you break it is you break it with poison, or you break it with like grass or electric attacks. Lando, I think, is a really good pair for it because it resists. It's immune to the electric. It's a nice pivot. It's got the Intimidate, so you can hit on the physical side. So you can take hits on the physical side, which Milo is a bit weaker to. And then you've got sort of a second Water in Delta Lilligant was a little bit interesting. I'm not sure if I personally would have gone down that route. But yeah, each their own. They got Steel type and Registeel. Again, that's really nice. So forming this core of like Milo, Registeel, Licky, with like Lando in there, I think it's really nice. One thing I will say is we look at Lando, Delta Sceptile, even though it only has 85 attack, it does get guts, it gets Hone Claws, and some really nice coverage, so that's not an issue. You kind of have like Lando, Sceptile, Victini, Weavile, Armaldo to an extent. Like, we're all very heavy on this physical attack here. Yes, Delta Lilligant and Mega Milotic hit hard specially, but you're going to be running like bulky Mega Milotic most of the time, just because that's what the mon does the best. So I think this team is a little bit physically orientated for my liking. Yeah, Special Victini is a great set, but that's probably my main criticism with it. Also, looking at it, it's a bit reliant on the likes of Registeel and Milotic to take hits, just because, like, yes, you have Licky, but I feel like Licky can be a little bit exploited in the Insurgents meta, just because we have that power creep, we have those mons that are hitting just that little bit harder. Like, for example, Mega Milotic, it's a bulky mon. It is, like, that's what it does best, it sits, but it still has 130 special attack. So you can kind of see where I'm coming from, especially with Licky, having only Wish as recovery. Clicking Protect, giving Insurgents mons a free turn is a little bit more detrimental than normal ones. But other than that, I think it's a really good team. I'm going to give this one... We're looking at its hazard game. Armaldo's not going to be coming too often. I'm a little bit confused by the Armaldo draft, to be honest. I'm guessing it's for spin and rocks, just because it's usually drafted as a rain abuser. But it's fine without. Yeah, it's an interesting mon, but probably not going to come much. So rocks of Registeel Lando, it's good, not great. Removal is, again, good, not great. Pivoting options, Lando, Victini, Rotom, Delta Sceptile, and Mega Milotic. Pretty good, I'd say. Delta Milo almost never has room for flip turn, just from running like theory crafting sets. Like, you want recovery, Like you want an attacking move, maybe a coverage move, like say just dual stabs, and then usually you want some form of like toxic or haze or something or other, just along those lines, rather than flip turn. That's personally my opinion. So I'm gonna give this a 6.5. I think it's just a little bit less well rounded than the first team we saw, the first couple of teams we saw. That's what I see. So we're gonna move on to Egg. We got Mega Delta Lade, we got Garchomp, we got Delta Aurorus, Delta Venusaur, Delta Greninja, Thundy T, Bronzong, Toxicroak, Delta Amoonguss, and Meowstic. It is both Meowstics, but my doc splits them for some reason. First thing I will say, Mega Delta Lade, this thing is terrifying. Bolt Beam coverage, it stabs with 165 attack. That's what I'm talking about when I say that the Insurgent's power creep is real. Delta Aurorus is a fantastic mon. I've used it before, and it sits, and it sits, and it sits. If you have good flying resists, but you have Bronzong, we have Thundy, they're alright. And if you have good, like, freeze-dry resists, which, again, there's Bronzong there. So Bronzong, Delta Aurorus is a decent combo. Yeah, so one thing I will say with this team is I don't normally click over to this tab. Let's just come over here. Just look at his mashup versus Ghost and Dark types. It's like this one here. Toxicroak is not a resist to Dark types. I personally have a Darkness team, and I cannot wait for this matchup because Specs Lunar Cannon, Specs Shadow Ball, it railroads. The other thing I will say is your Water type doesn't resist fire, and so Garchomp is the only fire resist. So this team, while it looks like it's a group of really good mons, they don't gel together as well. Like, even only one water resist. Yes, you've got Dry Skin Toxicroak, but I don't really rate Toxicroak as a mon. So, like, even just looking at this table as a whole, there's not a lot of, like, resistance coverage going along here. And then to sort of compound that issue, Delta Aurorus is a really good wall in terms that it's a little bit better spatially than it is physically. But looking just down this down this column here, it's not pretty. It's Bronzong. Like Delta Venu can kind of take physical hits, but again, it's a bit more specially orientated. So I think this team's going to struggle a bit against hard hitting mons. And to compound that further, we only have Thundy for hazard removal. One remover is just not great, especially on a mon like Thundy, who is such a good Scarfer, such a good like double dance, or like agility sweeper. It doesn't really want to be clicking defog very often, and when your Mega is Rocks weak that can't run boots, personally, I think that this draft that's a pretty exploitable part of this draft. Like Delta Aurorus, yes, it gets leftovers as an ability. It's taking extra rocks chip, so effectively, when you don't have a remover, your Aurorus's ability is get leftovers an ability, but wait 2 turns, because that's how long it takes to cancel it out. So I really think a better dark type, like a dark type that wasn't part ghost. You also need a normal type on this team, I feel. The triple psychic doesn't really help your ghost weakness when there's no normal. So yeah, it's a bit like compounding issues here. But nonetheless, like, you do have Chomp, Mega Delta Lade, Thundy is like offensive mons. That's it. Sorry, that was the other thing that I wanted to mention. This special attack stat column, like Delta Gren, it's nice stabs, good fire type attacker, good pivot, which is the one thing that I do think this team has done well. It's got very nice pivots. It's got like 1, 2, it's got 4 very solid pivoting mons. But yeah, other than that, it's not the best. Speed tiers as well, so I'm going a bit out of order. It's been a while since I've done these. You have Delta Gren, then you have Lade, and it goes down to Chomp and Thundy. I would have liked to have seen something a bit like one of these sort of mons here. Yeah, I'm not really counting Meowstic just because it's Prankster, so its speed tier is largely irrelevant. I would have liked to have seen something else up around 110. Yes, you do have a really good Scarfer and Thundy, but yeah, it's hard to explain. It just doesn't really rub me the right way, this team. So for that reason, I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 10. Bear in mind, one thing I forgot to say at the start, these ratings are not all-inclusive. These ratings are subjective to the other teams in the division. So if this team was the best team in the division, it would get an 8 or a 9 out of 10. If this team is the worst, which it's the worst one we've seen so far, it's going to get a low score. So it's a comparative rating, not a be-all, end-all. So moving on, we've got S. S here, I don't know. Names are hard. With the Buttonmon, Delta Emolga, Delta Ambipom, Blissey, Megazeb Striker, Comfy, Scizor, Delta Groddle, Weezing, Delta Hooper, and Hitmontop. So first things first, normally I start with speed tiers, but Essie, you broke my pivots column. You went too far. The other thing, but yeah, let's start with the speed tiers, as we always do. Zeb and Delta Ambipom, like that's some really good speed tiers there. Then Emolga, combined with Fire Up or Blaze Boost or whatever the ability is called. It's a really nice speed tier, but you really want to break those water types first, which then you have the Scarf or Banded Woodhammer button. That's very strong mon. But yeah, you also have Megazeb Striker, really good at breaking water types. Another Fairy and Comfy. Comfy I personally don't think is a very good mon. Especially since we don't allow hidden power. It's a mon that basically lets their steel type in for free. Yes, you can click U-turn, but it's very easily taken. I can't speak today. It's very easily taken advantage of. So yeah, especially with this very low HP, lowish special attack, it's much more of a a utility mon which doesn't output a lot of damage. So I think it's very easily taken advantage of, and you don't really break steals the best with this team. Yes, you have Delta Emolga, which does that, but that's kind of it. When you're fighting as Hitmontop and your ground is Delta Groddle, it leaves a little bit to be desired, personally. Breaking steel, even steals are probably the best check to Rune Gross, just because you resist both stabs. Steel type, again, pretty good against Delta Ambipom because you resist the normal stab. Steals are good against Scizor because Scizor struggles to break without superpower. Yeah, steel types are a real problem for this team. I also don't think Blissey was really the fit here. You already have, let's just look down this column here. We have Comfy, we have Delta Hooper, we have Hitmontop, we have a lot of mons that can take special hits already, so I don't think... Personally, I think in draft, Blissey and Chansey are best drafted around hyper offense with a lot of pivots. We have a lot of pivots over here. I didn't know Ruin Gross got Volt Switch. Surely that's a bug. That mon shouldn't be able to Volt Switch. I think that might be a bug. Delta Hooper, also I didn't know got Volt Switch. So yeah, even though this looks like a lot, we have a couple doubled up here. We have Scizor as... Let me just highlight the doubled up. We got double here. I think this is a mistake. If not, then that's crazy. So yeah, we can take the bottom 4 off here, but we still do have a lot of pivoting options. But we don't really have the hyper offense to go with it. I personally would have loved to have seen one more really solid breaker on this team. Because especially one more solid physical breaker, I will say, because I think Scizor's best role. Yes, Banded Scizor's really nice. But I would have loved to have seen one more a physically fast mon. Because I feel like Ambipom's best as a cleaner. Yeah, in other words, let's just go across to our resistances chat. This is a problem. Yes, you have Groddle, which is water absorb, but that's a 2-point mon that has to check an entire type for your draft. Because otherwise, Liquidation or Surf or something like that just runs through this team. You go in with your water type. If, for example, play against Mega Gator or against Mega Crawdon is probably a better example because Mega Crawdon has another stab. it kind of just clicks Aquajet through this whole team. Like, it's kind of crazy. Also, this column here, Mega Zeb Striker is your only flying resist, and if we come back here, it's 63 and 83 bulk. Like, it's not great. So I think, like, looking again, ground resists, we do have Hooper and Wheezing, so that's not too bad. Yeah, it's just down here. There's a lot of bug. There's a lot of dragon, ghost, dark resistors, but not for like even fire as a type. You've got Groddle and Emolga. Emolga's defenses are pitiful. I think yeah, it's 55, 60, 60 bulk. You take a hit and Emolga's gone. But yeah, Groddle is so pressured here for a 2-point mon that's going to always be running a Violite, and with how many more dark types there are in this format, knockoff is going to be very scary for this mon. As I said, like, use Mega Crawdon as an example. That kind of just runs wreck through this team. Like, not even like exaggerating here, because your water type hates getting knocked off. So personally, if I was to fix this team, I think Comfy goes, I think Blissey goes, and I'd seriously consider either upgrading or getting a second water to go with Groddle. And you want a steel type that's not maybe a second steel, or maybe just a flying resist that isn't Zeb Striker. Maybe like a good rock type. Well, actually, you've got that. Yeah, it's hard. But I'm going to give this team a 6 out of 10. Mainly because it can click the buttons well. And it has decent removal and, like, alright hazard game. Again, something else that Grottle's pretty pressured into. Sorry, before I move on. Like, yeah, Blissey runs rocks, and Blissey's probably going to rocks most weeks, but it's Blissey or Delta Groddle. Like, this mon is 2 points. Yes, it was under tiered. It probably should be maybe 3 or 4 points. But it can't do everything. It really can't. So yeah, we're going to move on to Ben. I need to speed this up. We've been going for, like, I don't know, like half hour, and I'm on to, like, team number 6. So we gotta go a bit faster. We got Ben here with Latios, Mega Delta Medi, Delta Snorlax, Delta Gallade, Delta Magmortar, Arcanine, Galarian Zapdos, Silvally, Ferroseed, and Ariados. Looking at our speed tiers, where I always start, this makes me sad. This column makes me sad, because Lati is your speed control. In the entirety of your speed control, you have, in my opinion, and feel free to come at me, the best Scarfer in the game. Galarian Zapdos is the best Scarfer in the game, because it's basically better Hawlucha. So that is the one mitigating factor here. Delta Gallade is an interesting pick. I personally haven't really looked into this mon too much. Yes, it does get bulb. I think it gets... Oh, let's see. It gets Volt Absorb and Ice Body, so some decent abilities. But yeah, I haven't looked into that mon too much, but I mean, it is a 125 attack Bolt Beam Stab mon. One thing I'm noticing is Ariados has webs, and this team is pretty reliant on webs. Mega Delta Medi hits everything for super effective damage. There's like 10 mons that it doesn't. It's ridiculous. Delta Lax is a really strong mon. It's made even better if you have a solid steel to go with it, which... Delta Mag isn't the greatest steel, personally. Just because, like, it's not the bulkiest. It's a really good mon, but it's not the greatest at being a steel type, if that makes sense. Which brings me to my next point, this column here. In terms of taking physical hits, it's Delta Lax. Even though it has 65 defense, it's the best at taking physical hits with this stat. And then we come down, it's like Silvally. And Silvally is good, but there's no reliable recovery, and it gets essentially no item. So it's... Well, actually, you've got Arcanine's probably better with that, Intimidate. But yeah, it's... that's a bit of a concerning point for me. It does do something really well that I think you need to do with Medi, and that's get a lot of pivoting. We've got, like, Galarian Zap, Silvally, we've got Arcanine with the Teleport, we got Delta Mag with the Flip Turn, we've got, like, Mega Delta Gallade with the Volt Switch, and then a couple Baton Pass users in there. So I think it's alright. I didn't know Delta Gallade got Teleport, which is interesting. That makes that mon a little bit better. Defog being only Laddie and Silvally. Laddie bringing Defog is very rare. I have played in a lot of leagues over my time, and I very rarely see Latios run Defog just because it never has the room. To be honest, and Silvally being here on the other one. This is a pretty weak, but you do have web spikes, T spikes, and some okay rockers. Like Delta Mag's probably a rocker most weeks, which I feel like takes away from what it wants to do, which is click the button. Yeah, so hazard game is a real negative here. Speed tiers a pretty big negative. Defensive stats is a pretty big negative. And one thing I do want to show you, which is actually not as bad as I thought, but if you have a type Silvally, like this team doesn't have a dark type. So Psychic, yeah, there's some resists in Latios and Delta Mag and Ferroseed, but if you come up against like a Reuniclus or a setup Psychic, you can't really do anything about that other than run Silvally Dark, which is the same thing to say about is Ghost Weakness. So I think this team is. I just personally don't think this team is very strong, and I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Only reason it's scoring a little bit higher than Egg is because there is ways to patch up your type weaknesses. That's pretty much it. And Delta Megi plus Latios is like offensive synergy that just works. Like it just does. Yeah, so we're moving on to team number 7, which is Stanny. You got the Cinderace, the Lando Eye, the Mega Bishop, the Delta Torterra, Clefable, Delta Avalugg, Delta Gardevoir, Vileplume, Delta Kabutops, and Porygon. It's got a few Deltas in there. First of all, let's start at our speed tiers. Cinderace, very fast. But that's the only thing over 110, which is a bit concerning for me. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen another fast mon in here somewhere. It's just personally because it means that you can be like mons that have 110 that are at or around 110, like even your Keldeos, they often have to accept that there's like if they're not running Scarf, that there's like 2 or 3 mons that they won't outspeed. On this team, it's like say I have a Keldeo, I'm only worried about Cinderace or a Scarfer, and Sheer Force Lando and Mega Bishop can't. Well, like Lando can be a Scarfer, but Scarf Lando is a bit of a it's not its best set, and Mega Bishop can't be Scarfed, so I'm looking down at like Scarf Gardevoir, Scarf Kabutops. Yeah, there's no real speed control in this team. It does have like a Trick Room setter in Clefable to kind of mitigate that, and maybe you can go into like Delta Avalugg. But again, that's more of a bulky mon. Yeah, so I see it as lacking a bit of offense, like a bit of speed plus offense, I might say. Libero Ace and Lando Eye with Mega Bishop, like that's crazy offense. Looking at its hazard control, a lot of rockers, like we don't need this many stealth rockers. Yes, Bishop and Lando aren't really going to run it, but then you still have 3 reliable rockers and spikes. This is a bit overkill, but it's like you better be overkill than not. Defog removal is basically Delta Avalugg. Lando and Cinderace can afford to run it. Cinderace doesn't really want to court change with this because you get up rocks yourself so easily. Court changing away, unless they're like hazard stacking or setting webs against you, it's not really going to be an option. So it's mainly going to be Delta Avalugg removing, which I am not a fan of having just like one mon that removes all the time, even if it is very reliable like Avalugg is here. It's not for me. Looking at these pivots, we have Lando, Cinderace, very good. Delta Gardevoir, we've got a couple of teleport mons, so it does it alright. Maybe one more would have been nice. Honestly, like this team is just screaming out for like one more special break or a physical breaker that just like comes in and out with a bit of momentum and a nice speed tier. Honestly, something like I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Just a quick look at weaknesses and resistances chart, which is exactly what I wanted to point out. Delta Torterra and Vileplume is like, it's decent water resists. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty good. I'm just showing this basically as a point to my last few teams. There is one type here that is a little bit weak, but it's on a very reliable mon. And so yeah, other than that, I think this is a bit of a this is a decent like a 7 out of 10, similar to Justin's, which was first. In that, if this team does well, the first couple of mons are going to get a lot of kills, and it's built around these mons. But yeah, it's not without its flaws. Moving on, we have Charles and Charles, or however they want to. It's Charles. We have Mew, Delta Regice, Mega Scizor, Delta Muck, Sylveon, Noivern, Zarude, Emboar, Rotom Frost, Delta Servine, and Kecleon. First things first, drafted a normal Mega. Boo, that's boring. No one drafts regular Megas in Insurgents. It's very boring. Next, speed tiers. Our speed tier is entirely Noivern, and it's Noivern and then Mew. And the best way to draft around Mew is to pretend Mew doesn't exist. So if we were doing that, it's a huge gap, and I'm not a fan of it. The one thing is somehow we've managed to draft an Insurgents team with actual removal. 5 removers. Yes, Mew doesn't really count, but like 4 decent removers. Delta Muck is a really strong mon. I wanted that. There were 2 mons that I wanted on this draft that I didn't get, and that was Delta Muck and Delta Sceptile, and I was really sad about it, because Muck is, honestly, it's very good, because it has double immunities. Like Delta Regice, it gets Water Absorb, I think. Oops. Storm Drain, same thing. But yeah, so you have, if you bring this core here, Delta Regice with Storm Drain, Delta Muck with Sap Sipper, you can't hit Regice super effectively, and do any damage without going Freeze Dry. Speaking of that, Freeze Dry kind of wrecks this team, outside Scizor and Rotom Frost, I guess. But yeah, so one thing I will say is this team's special offense is Sylveon, and then Mew if you want to run like offensive Mew. Which, yeah, Noivern is there, but Noivern's like a pivot, which this team has a lot of. I'm bouncing all over the place here, which kind of happens in my power rankings. So we've got Mew, Mega Scizor, Noivern, Zarude, Rotom Frost, Delta Servine. This is another person that's broken my pivots chart. Like, it comes down here off the bottom. But that's just because Mew has like 6 pivoting moves in itself. Yes, this is another one of those teams that's good but not great. Like, Delta Muck, Delta Regice is plus Sylveon. Like, that's a core that's going to be really hard to break. Like, I'm already not looking forward to playing this. Actually, that's not going to be fun to break. But I don't see it doing. It doesn't really like have a really strong offense to go off that core, if that makes sense, because your special offense is Sylveon. Like, yes, you have Mega Scizor, Zarude, Emboar off that, but I just feel like it's a little bit underpowered compared to Insurgents mons generally. Like, our hazard game here, we have Kecleon, Muck, and Delta Regice. Hang on, I lost my mouse for a second there. So we have these mons that are like, it's good but not great, and it's hard to say why, if that makes sense. I think this is probably another. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 actually, which is actually going to be our highest ranked team. So no, it's a 7.5. 7.5 out of 10. I think it's above average just because this core is going to be impossible to break. But I would have loved to see a little bit more offense backed off the back of that core. So moving on, we got Drakenheart's team here. We got the Mega Gator, Delta Regirock, Heatran, Spectra, Persimmon, Delta Weezing, Latias, Sneasel, Cradily, Florges, and Haunter. First things first, these speed tiers, they're beautiful, because look at that. We have a Mon at 130, we have Spectra only 130 speed. I thought it was faster than that for some reason. Maybe this doc's wrong. We got Latias here, we got the Sneasel, yeah, not coming to much. Then we got Mega Gator, like, it just sort of flows nicely. Mega Gator, Delta Regirock, like, they're 2 very strong picks. Mega Feraligatr just kind of runs wreck through everything, and its bulk means it always gets a Dragon Dance off. Delta Weezing's an interesting one. It's a bit of an interesting one. Spectria also was a bit of an interesting draft, just given how many good Dark types there are in Insurgents. Like, there's a lot. Yeah, it's what I'm seeing is it's a nice spread of stats. Like, even if we just look at this, we've got some nice greens and dark greens across every column. Our physical offense is kind of Mega Gator Persimmon, but that's okay because Mega Gator is that oppressive that it forces monster run defense investment. And then you've got like Sneasel here, which triple axle or knock, like from boosting Sneasel, is pretty good. It doesn't really it does, it takes some defense investment. God, I am losing my ability to speak. So yeah, it's decent. Looking at our pivots, this hurts me a little bit. You want to get in Mega Gator as often as possible. You want to get in Spectria as often as possible. Just to click the buttons, and you don't really have a way of doing it with this team. Latias, like, Baton Pass is one of those weird pivoting moves where it's, because Stat Pass is banned and Latias loves setting up and doing all that sort of stuff, Baton Pass isn't really going to be run too often. And then you got Persimmon, which is like a mid to low tier draft mon. Same with Weezing, that's sort of like mid to low tier. You don't, like, say we pick a 6 for this team. Say you got like the top 4 mons you want to bring, and then maybe we would bring like Latias and then a filler here. You've only got really one form of pivoting, and that's leaving Florges on the bench. It's a bit interesting, if you ask me. That's a real weakness of this team. Also, with its hazard removal. Personally, like, Laddie runs it a little bit better than the other Laddie, because like Latias is a bit more defensively orientated. Yes, it still has like 110 speed and special attack, but it's not amazing. And then Florges, same with Comfy. It's very exploitable by steel types. And yes, we have Tran Delta Regirock, which breaks steel types really well, but it's still not one of my favorite mons. Heatran Delta Regirock, decent rockers. Cradilly, I am a big Cradilly stan, but I don't see the point of it on this team, because you already have a water immunity, and that's Cradilly's kind of niche. So yeah. Personally, this team, like, if we look at our weaknesses and resistances, it's fine, like, across here. Ground is the one that I was thinking of, which is probably not the greatest, but you do have Laddie and Weezing, which are immune. But yeah, so I'm going to give this team a 7 out of 10. That lack of pivoting ability is really hurting it, and personally, I would have loved to have seen one more physical attacker. And I think that these mons down, like Persimmon, and then sort of like these mons down here, these last 4, could have been used to maybe the points could have been used a little bit better. Is what I feel. But yeah, I'm actually gonna record this in 2 parts. 18 teams is way too much to do at one go. So now you'll see some fancy cut where we'll continue in the next part. Got second set of recording here. We're gonna jump straight into it with Hopeless's team, and immediately off the bat I see some power, but we're gonna go through. We got Polt, Delta Hydra, Delta Escav, Skarm, Rotom Wash, Delta Frostless, Delta Blaziken, Ashifu Rapid, Delta Sableye, and Mega Delta Mawile. Right off the bat, this immediately strikes me as like a powerful team. I mean, Polt, everyone knows what that thing does by now. Hydreigon, I actually used this last time I played here, and that thing is a monster. With poison, like the poison version of Pixelate, Hyper Voice, breaking subs. You've got Corrode there as stab, Tri Attack for like some annoying little status conditions there. It's just that it's basically better Nido Queen, better Nido King, in my opinion. It's really strong. Then we got Delta Escav, where that thing gets like simple Swords Dance. Under Trick Room, or even just normally, it gets like Recovery. It's a really good fairy type. And I think it's slept on a little bit. Great value pick there. Then you got Scum, the Wash Tom, that's just like a core that's been around for a while. Delta Frostlass, Delta Blaziken, really cool. Gale Wings, Hurricane, or whatever other flying moves it gets. That's a pretty cool mon. The where I feel like this team falls away a bit is so these last three picks here. Ashifu Rapid doesn't really like, it's pretty much the same speed tier as Delta Hydra. We already have a really good water type that's going to come to a lot of games, and so it kind of just gives us that physical attacking fighting type, which I feel like that role could have maybe been filled in a little bit better. Delta Sableye, honestly, this mon's just a bad mon. Like, it's not very good. But, I mean, we all have those low tier filler points. It does get, like, spikes, it gets rocks, and that's about it. So it's something, and I feel like a different Mega might have suited this team better here. Mega Delta Morwile, what it does really well is it traps ground types. And yeah, your team, I mean, the team doesn't even really hate ground types that much. Like, it can trap water types, but you already have, like, Rotom Wash there to deal with it. Yeah, it doesn't appreciate waters too much, but I just feel like these three picks here, maybe even Delta Frostlass, could have been a bit better, like, a bit more sort of suit the top end of the team, because you're bringing like these three mons most weeks, and that's a really good core. And then Wash Tom comes a lot. Skarmory is a really nice mon, and so I feel like, yeah, even like these three, you'd want something that complements them a little bit. Maybe you want another strong special attacker. Because like Dragapult does it really well, but in terms of raw damage, it's kind of like Hydra and Blaziken here with maybe a bit of Wash Tom. The physical attacking side's really nice. Like, you got Delta S-Cav, you got a Pult that can go physical. Delta Blaziken, I mean, I can see where Hopeless was going with this, but these three, but I'm just not super sold. What I am sold on is that, like, we have all the hazards in the world. We've got 4 Stealth Rockers, we've got 4 Spikes users, and we got T-Spikes. So Boots is kind of a must or removal versus this team. We've seen a couple of teams earlier that have had questionable removal, to say the least. So they're going to maybe struggle a little bit versus this team. Even got some T-Spikes in there, which is nice. Any team that doesn't have a great grounded poison, our removal is pretty decent. Like, we have priority defog here in Delta Blaziken, so that automatically makes it a bit more reliable for me in those webs matchups, especially like if you really need to get that defog off. Rotom Washes and Skarmory, we've seen those mons for ages. They defog and they do it pretty well. We've got Dragapult and moving into the pivots, we got Dragapult, Urshifu, Rotom, Delta Blaziken, Delta Hydreigon, and then like Morwile and Frostlass with Baton Pass. So it's a pretty decent pivoting core, if I do say so myself. But yeah, this team is really strong. We have flicked over to the weakness and resistance chart for a couple of these, so we're just going to do the same here. Looking along, again, this is pretty balanced. One thing I would love to have seen is a normal type, because strong ghosts kind of go ham on this team. Like, Mega Delta Morwile is not the most special bulky mon. In fact, it's pretty frail on the special side. So something like a Gengar, or I'm trying to think of a Delta that's a good ghost. I know that there are some. But yeah, something like a Gengar, or like an Aegislash, or something like Specs Shadow Ball just kind of rails this team. So maybe that's where these like Urshifu and Delta Sableye mons could be. Ooh, let's just not break my dock here. Don't mind me. Yeah, so there's a Delta Sableye in there. Yeah, don't mind me. So maybe that's where these mons could have been fitted out a little bit nicer. Like, Morwile's not the bulkiest, and personally, I'm a little hesitant on Morwile because I know Justin used it last season and he hated the mon. It just didn't work. He went like 1-7 or something with it, or it just, yeah, it's a neat idea of a mon, but it'll be interesting to see if Hopeless can get some more success out of it. So, looking at this team, I think it's really well rounded, and it plays into like the core of Hydra S-Cav plays into itself really well. Breaking those steel types, like I guess Morwile can kind of trap them. I feel like Morwile gets ways to hit them. So I think it's not. It's a pretty good team. I'm gonna give this 7.5 out of 10. One thing I'm struggling here is all these teams are very similar. Like in terms of they're good but not great. So at the end of the video, we will go through and re-rank these. So we have K Savage here. We got the Urshifu, the Delta Metagross Spider, the Delta Vespiquen, Gengar. There we go. That's the team that just rails hopeless. We've got Slowbro, Togekiss, Mega Sceptile, Jolteon, Alolan Ninetales, and Munchlax. First of all, boo, he drafted a normal Mega. Like, that's no fun. Who drafts a normal Mega in Insurgents? Like, one thing I can say, I love this. Like, this is really good. Even Togekiss to an extent, like, these six, very good. What did you do here? Like, honestly, what did we do here? If I was to fix this team, like, straight away here. Looking at our speed tiers, Jolteon, Mega Sceptile, Gengar, Urshifu, like, it's a decent speed tier, along with Ninetales. I feel like that's what was motivating these last 4 picks here, is, like, speed tiers, and then obviously Munchlax down there for a 1-pointer. It's got a decent spread, like, quite offensive. We've got some really nice, hard-hitting offensive mons up the top, and then we've got like the Togekiss, Mega Sceptile, Jolteon. Although Jolteon, here's my gripe before I go any further. Mega Sceptile really struggles against steel types without hidden power. Because we've got Leaf Storm, we've got, like, it just doesn't get the coverage. And then Jolteon, it can't hit ground types, like, at all. It really just can't. Hyper Voice or Shadow Ball isn't doing anything. You kind of have to be Specs all the time because you just need that damage output when you're not hitting something super effectively. And I just don't think it's very good. And then Alolan Ninetales, I can kind of get the, let's put like Vespiquen, Gengar, Shifu, even like Spider-Gross behind Veil, and then they go ham. But like, it doesn't really fit because it just sort of seems tacked on when you really needed more from this team. And like my second point is this column here. If you don't bring Togekiss for whatever reason, it has a bad matchup, like your opponent has 6 steel types and 2 electrics. Like, if Togekiss doesn't come for whatever reason, your opponent clicks rocks for free. Like, they click their rocks, they set up their spikes, they do whatever, and it's just such a hard time because, like, yes, Urshifu is like resist rocks, but like you get some rocks and some spikes. Like, it's taken a bit of damage every time it comes in. Like, Slowbro doesn't want to run boots, all that sort of stuff. It's interesting. That's sort of my gripe with this team. In saying that, like, we do have a pretty strong hazard game. We've got the Spider-Gross, the Delta Vespiquen, are our only 2 hazard setters, but Spider-Gross does get all 4 hazards. Vespiquen gets Stealth Rocks, or I shouldn't say all 4 because there are Stealth Coals in this meta, but yeah. So it's, looking at it now, like, only 2 mons having hazard control, it's leaves a little bit to be desired. So looking at our pivots of this team, we got Urshifu, we got Jolteon, Togekiss, Slowbro. It's alright. It's decent, but it's not amazing considering, like, Togekiss, you're already forcing it to run Defog. It's not going to have room for Baton Pass, really, like, ever. And then Jolteon takes up 2 of these slots, which I really don't think is a great mon. So it's decent. Good, but not great. One more thing I will say is this team is already pressuring Togekiss way too much. Look down the special defense stat. And yeah, I understand that's a pretty offensive team with kind of like Slowbro, Vespiquen. But your whole SpDef, like, wall or taking special hits is kind of on, like, Vespiquen, which is bulky but not amazing. Slowbro, again, like, it's fat, but you really need to invest a lot. Or Togekiss. And so it's pressuring them on even further. Like, if you had some great defensive mons and, like, Togekiss was free to be that remover or be that, like, Specs or Scarf Air Slash or Nasty Plot or, like, T-Way, then I could kind of, like, almost forgive this, but, like, then again, I really can't. But yeah, that's my main gripe with this team. The offense, the first 5 mons I'm in love with. Togekiss I can get behind. The last 4 I just can't. And for that reason, I am going to give this... What do I... you know what, I'm going to remind myself, because this is a day later, I'm going to remind myself, what did I give? I gave this team a 6 out of 10. You know, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 as well. And where are we? No, we're at this one. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, just because I don't think it's, yeah, yeah, I just don't think it's very strong. But yeah, we're going to move on. We've got silver now, and I have been looking at, I have done PRs and looked over silver's drafts for many, many times. One thing I will say, by silver's standards, and he will know this himself, this isn't very strong. Silver is one of the people that I have known for quite a while, and he is used to getting absolutely broken. This is a good team, but it's not silver level, and I think he won't mind me saying that. But we're going through, we got Delta Serp, Zapdos, Delta Tangrowth, Jirachi, Mega Crawdont, P2, Delta Gorobus, Swallow, Ludicolo, and Muck. First off the bat, like, our speed, it doesn't look amazing with like 2 mons over 110 and a couple at base 100, but then we got Ludicolo in here. So I think the speed tiers are quite nice. You also have double Trick Room setters with Gorobus and Porygon 2. So you could run something like an offensive Delta Tangrowth, which is really good. Even like low-key offensive Muck, it gets like decent coverage. Probably not the best. You can run offense like Shell Smash Delta Gorobus, you can run like Trick Room offensive, you could run even something like weird like a Min Speed Mega Crawdon to take advantage of that, and now that Trick Rock's in the format, I think it's a very viable option. But yeah, so looking in terms of our offenses, especially we hit very hard and we have some very nice coverage. Like, you've got Delta Tangrowth, Zapdos, you've got Delta Serp, like, just looking at its move pool, it's going to be special most of the time. Delta Gorobus hits very hard. Ludicolo, even there, under Rain with, like, a Life Orb boost. We do have Mega Crawdon physically, but I would have maybe loved to have seen, like, one more just oppressive physical attacker. Just, like, in this format now that we have some walls have gotten a bit better, like, for example, like the Delta Mux, the Delta Regirox, maybe one more just like oppressively offensive mon would have been cool, but that might just be me nitpicking. Defensively, we're very well rounded here. Like, if you need a mon to take physical hits, you've got like Serp, you've got Zapdos to an extent, more because it's typing rather than it's like actual defense stat, Delta Tang, Jirachi, you've got Gorobus down here with Marvel Scale, so that makes it a really good wall. P2, it's very well rounded. Spadef, not as much, like it doesn't have as much utility, but it's still perfectly fine. Like P2, you've got Zapdos, Serp, once again, Jirachi, Muck, it takes hits very well. Hazard game, a little bit weak. 2 rockers, one of them also having spikes. I usually like to have a little bit more, but these 2 mons will become, like, if there's a game where Silver benches both Tang and Jirachi this season, I'll be a little bit surprised. But yeah, it's I would have loved like maybe one more rocker, 1 or 2 more setters. But yeah, that's fine. Removal, like we have good removal. Zapdos, Delta Serp. The good thing about getting a Rain Core is you have good removal. Like, both of those mons get good removal. I know Silver was really hoping for that Delta D-Knight and then some other things that got sniped, and it was just sad. But I think this, like, even Delta Tangrowth with Dry Skin, I think it gets Dry Skin. I'm pretty sure it does. Yeah, it gets Dry Skin. So that's a really nice part of your Rain Core. You've got, like, Crawdon with Adaptability, Aqua Jets even under Rain, like, hits very hard. You've got Ludicolo. So I think it does well. One thing where this team shines is it shines at getting mons in and out very quickly. Like, you got Zapdos, Swallow, Jirachi, P2, Delta Serp, Delta Gorobus. So you got 6 out of the 10 mons, 10 mons that get momentum. And the 4 that don't, Tangrowth, you've got Ludicolo, Muck, and what was the 4th one that I said? Crawdon. Crawdon is the mon that you're getting in, so it doesn't really matter that it doesn't have momentum. 2 of your mons are real low tier picks, and then Delta Tangrowth, it can come in pretty freely on Rain because of that Dry Skin. So getting mons in and out is where this team shines. And with someone like Silver, who I know I don't take into account coach's skill in PRs, but someone like Silver, who this is his bread and butter, I can see this team doing very well. Yeah, I'm actually going to give this team I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I personally think this is the best team we've seen so far. Just because there is one thing you'll see across here is there's no real weakness to this team. It's very well rounded. It gets in and out very quickly, and it has some very impressive breakers. Like, if you're looking at this type chart, the one thing you might say is, oh, it's a little bit fairy weak, considering it's Muck and Rachi, but Jirachi is one of the best fairy type answers in the game. And yeah, it's very well rounded. The only thing I will say is Gorobus as your fairy. It might be a little bit more pressured than it would like to be because it does love running that offensive set, but Marvel Scale is just as good. But yeah, so we're going to move on to, who's on next one? Arcacoit, I don't know how to say that. We're just going to call him Arc. So we got Delta Lop, Delta Haxorus, Delta Scizor, Galarian Slowking, Mandibuzz, Chandelure, Delta Lilligant Fairy, Delta Tangela, Raikou, and Tapu Bulu. He's making me say all the variants in the first few mons. Looking at this, like, straight off the bat, this is a team that I just like the look of. There are definitely flaws, and we will get into that. First flaw I see a little bit is we have very fast mon, quite fast mon, and then there's a bit of a gap down to Haxorus. I would have loved to have seen, like, at least one more mon up in the hundreds, just for my own personal thing. I think that's quite important with these sort of teams. The second thing, we normally go into looking at our breakers. We have Bulu, Delta Scizor, Delta Haxorus, Mega Lob. Like, we hit very hard on the physical side. And then on the special side, like, we have Chandelure, Galarian Slowking, Fairy Lilligant, Raikou. We hit very hard on both sides. We got some decent walls in here, like Mandibuzz, very good. Delta Tangela, Bulu defensively is really nice. I do like the terrain that this team gives, considering that our ground type's Delta Tangela, which is not going to be kicking Earthquake, not with that 55 attack. And it just it gives some nice passive recovery as well to things like Delta Scizor, who don't want to be clicking it, like Galarian Slowking, like regen plus grassy terrain recovery, also mitigating the ground weakness on a few mons. I think Bulu fits really nice here. This column here is where I don't like this team. Delta Tangler being your only hazard setter leaves it free for some teams to stack on you. We saw earlier, I think it was it Case Average's team, where it was only Togekiss. You can't really punish that team because you have to bring your Delta Tangela, which is a good mon, but it's a low tier mon for a reason. Like, you have, let's just say you've got like this as a top 6, and even throw Raikou and Bulu there. You have to bench one of them to fit Tangela on to be able to punish your opponent there. And if, for example, like Delta Tangela has a bad matchup, your opponent isn't forced to run boots. Like, we've already seen a Moltres drafted. Like, they might be like, you know what, I can take the risk and get away with no boots on my Moltres and maybe run like a Pasho Berry for the Haxorus or something. Like, it just doesn't. I don't like not having rocks, and I don't like one mon being forced to come because of rocks. The removal, Mandibuzz is very reliable. Delta Lilligant Fairy, it can run defog. Doesn't love it. But it's barely passable. Our Pivoting Core, on the other hand, very nice. We have, what is that, like 5 mons that do it very well, and then you have like these two, which already get U-turns, so we don't worry about it. To get the Bulu in, to get the Haxorus in, to get the Mega Delta Lop in, I think it does really well. Quick check over to this page, and we will see that it's fairly balanced. One of my gripes is Chandelure has to take all your fire type attacks, which is a little bit scary. Yeah, it's a little bit scary just because your water type doesn't resist steel. And personally, with something like a Delta Haxorus, I think it would have been more beneficial to get a secondary water, like something just low tier, to be able to take those fire type attacks, take those, just be like that bulky water for the squad. But yeah, I think it's alright. It's a little bit ghost weak, just because you're very heavily reliant on Mandibuzz. But if you're going to be heavily reliant on a Ghost Resist, Mandibuzz is probably one of the better ones. So I'm going to give this team, let's Hmm. It's very strong, and like these first 5 months here are very good. Um, in fact, it's just the value that's being got. Like even these two down here, Raikou Bulu. I want to give this team a really nice score, but I'm going to. It's a 7.5 out of 10. It would honestly, I think it would almost be up there and maybe better than Silvers if we had a some rock support like any form of hazards. Moving on, we got Charlie. Charlie's team is an interesting one. Running through it, we got Mega Fisk, we've got Taunty, Terrakion, Curum, Delta Lantern, Metagross, Galarian Weezing, Ordinos, Delta Scrafty, Alolan Persian, and Delta Ludicolo. First of all, the speed tiers are a little bit all over the place on this team. Like we've got Alolan Persian and Taunty, very good. Terrakion is good. We go to Curum, and then it's just a lot of red, which isn't bad. But it's interesting. It's just a bit interesting to me. Like Mega Stunfisk, it really loves the option of Trick Room. I drafted it the first time I played here. I drafted about around a little bit more heavy Trick Room support, but just having that that oppressive, like that option, for it to be like an oppressive, like quote unquote fast wall breaker it makes things a lot more difficult for your opponent. I know that prepping, like your opponent's prepping for this, without like a real, like Delta Ludicolo does get it, but this is sort of your only Trick Room like sweeper, quote unquote. So they're not as worried about, like if I was prepping for this team, I wouldn't be as worried about the Trick Room option. And so if I'm prepping for Mega Fisk, I can afford to maybe, you know what, I'll let it get a kill and then I'll come in and revenge it. It is very bulky, like 109, 104, and 134 defenses. Like Fisk is very good. But looking at this Mega Delta Lantern, this was a very early Delta Lantern, and I'm not sure why. It's just not a very good mon. Like if we look at it, even its abilities, Unnerve, Flash Fire, Levitate, like cool. You already have Taunty for like Levitate. Fire immunities. Our water type is Delta Ludicolo, so maybe that's something that you wanted, but it's a bit weird. Honestly, from like here down, this team is a little strange. Apart from Delta Scrafty, I love Delta Scrafty, and it was way too underpriced for us and for what we were doing. Yeah, it's those defenses. Now it has Grass type, it has a reliable recovery, and it comes with Rough Skin. It's a very good mon, and I think it's phenomenal pickup. Yeah, but sort of like the Metagross, G-Weezing, Ordino, Alolan Persian, Delta Lantern, I feel like the points could have been used better. In terms of like offensive ability, outside of these top like 4 or 5 mons, like we can throw Metagross in there as well, I guess. This is all bulky or pivots or not going to give you any offenses. This is not going to give you any. So it's not a very threatening mon outside of the obvious, like the usual suspects. So I don't know. I'm not hugely in love with that. Coupled with these speed tiers, like we bunch a lot around here. Our hazard setters are pretty decent. Like Fisk very rarely wants to run rocks. Tarak and Metagross are okay. Maybe one more like reliable rocker, so Metagross isn't being forced to do it every week. Removal is okay. Again, good, not great. You got those 2 mons that are going to be coming a lot. Like G-Weezing, I feel like has to come a lot here just for the utility that it is. And then we've got like this part makes me sad here because you don't get in your breakers very easily. Like you got Persian, Taunty, and Mega Stunfisk as your only pivots. And 2 of the mons you want to get in, like Torn and Stunfisk, are the pivots. So getting in things like Tarak, Curum, like Mega Fisk is going to be a little bit harder for this team. And I feel like if you weren't going to draft Mega Stunfisk around a Trick Room core, or at least have that option, you really want to draft it around like a high pivot core. The way I see it is like a Mega Metacham. You want to be able to get that mon in to be able to click its button as many times as possible. Just make it super oppressive for the opponent, make it really hard for them. And for that reason, I'm going to give Charlie I'll give him a 6.5 out of 10. These rankings are a lot closer than I thought. Everyone's drafted about the same, which is very interesting. I shall go through and rank these all, as I've been saying all along. I'll go through and rank them all at the end. But yeah, looking at one thing we will do. Looking at this, and I want to prove something real quick here. We have oh, that was the wrong team. That's why I couldn't find it. We scroll along here, and ground is a bit of a trouble for us. But we do have two decent resists in that it was. I guess he's being pressured with Ordino and a Lowland Persian as our way to break ghost types. It doesn't sit right with me, and then like Wheezing and Persian to be breaking dark types. Again, like it's looking at these SPDF stats and then our HP stats. We don't deal with ghost or dark types very well. Sorry. A normal type outside of Ordino, I think would have been good. Basically, I think like from Delta Lantern, Delta Ludicolo, take out Scrafty, I think this team could have utilized its points a little bit wiser. But yeah, so we're going to move on. We're going to go, who's up next? Ivy is up next. Oh, we've got this team. This is an interesting team. First of all, boo normal Mega, but then again, I did steal the Insurgents Reign Mega, so can't be too mad. We got Cake round 1 into D-Knight, Necrozma, Delta Scyther, we got Politoed, Mega Swampert, Delta Noivern, Flygon, Galarian Corsola, and Delta Octillery. Interesting team. One thing I will say is, yes, this team looks absolutely broken with its offenses. Like, you have Scyther, Necrozma, Dragonite, Cake, Mega Pert. Like, that's an impressive offensive core if I've ever seen one, with all of this pivoting right here. And Speed Tiers, while they aren't amazing, we have Rain Sweepers to make up for that. But this is like... this hurts me. This, like... drafting normal Flygon, yes, it does get armor. But if it gets armor, then it's not running like a boosting item and a resist berry or a like Scarfle or anything. Having that as your only removal when you have like when you don't have a ground poison is just asking the opponent, be like, hey, set up T-spikes, set up spikes, set up rocks, do what you like. Crustle Cake is very oppressive and it wants to find a way to Shell Smash for free. If you have a bunch of hazards up and like T-spikes, getting rid of this mon before it can set up just became a whole lot easier. Delta Dragonite loves coming in and out because it can it volt switches or it U-turns or it flip turns, sorry, and it comes in and out and it clicks buttons. Same with now Mega Swampert, just like it can click flip turn and that's made the mon so much better, I think. Like even Delta Scyther, like all these mons love pivoting in and out and just keeping up that offensive pressure. But once rocks or spikes or T-spikes go up, that just becomes so much harder. Like it in terms of hitting, like physically versus specially, I would have loved maybe one more like special attacker, just to balance out the team a little bit. You do have Necro and like Delta Dragonite, you know, like Noivern. But the thing I'll say is these 4 mons should be replaced. Galarian Corsair is way too passive, especially in a meta like this, where like clicking Substitute just walls this mon. It's very interesting. Delta Octillery, it's a cool mon, bit of a meme though, because it's also your fire type on a rain team, and you want to be clicking Overheat a lot. So that kind of goes against what the team's looking at here. Delta Noivern, this is like, let's just look at its abilities. It's Chlorophyll, like Flower Gift and Solar Power. So it's a Sunmon. And we put it on a rain team. I can kind of understand it. Like, hey, a Grass Steel on rain teams is generally the way you go, but it doesn't hit the same. And then finally, there's no flying type on this team. One of the best things about rain is grass types are normally pretty good against rain, but you have your flying type that gets 100% accurate hurricanes. That's why Zapdos, that's why Tauntaun have been so good in rain in the past. And this team just doesn't take advantage of that, and that's a bit strange to me. So yeah, I think these mons here should be replaced. We can get in some more removal. We can get in a flying type maybe, a better steel type. Just overall, like, it's, yeah, just like round out this oppressive offensive core here of these 6 a little bit better. Um, and that's my main comment on this team. And one thing I will show you is the thing about Rain is, oh dear. Thing about Rain is it is weak to a few types. Ground usually isn't one of them. But when Flygon's our only ground answer, like, Flygon has to come almost every week because it's your only defog, it's your only ground resist. Yeah, it's... Also, we have Cake as our sole way against ghost types. So, again, this is another team where whoever has Gengar is just licking their lips because it has a field day here. Our only flying resist being Delta Dragonite. Again, that's where I think like a better Steel comes in. Yeah, so it's a little hairy. This, I remember when we got to about round 5 and we're drafting, and I think this is what Ivy had, and I was terrified because I was like, dear God, I don't want to play this team. It's already a weather war, which makes things hard enough, but like this is just oppressive and gonna destroy me. But unfortunately, I've got to give this team a 6 out of 10. Just, yes, it does have very good hazard setters. I mean, 2 of those being Octillery, and 1 being Galarian Corsola, which I think are just bad mons. So when you look at it, actually, it's Mega Pert, Delta Noivern, and Swampert, which is like not as good. I think I've got to give this 6. Like, I gave Charlie a 6.5. I think I got to give this the same, just because one of the things, like, the reason as Draft League players we draft 9, 10, or 11 mons is we've got to, like, make the opponent predict. Like, if they over-prep for a Galarian Corsola and then we just don't bring it, we might effectively make a mon redundant. With this team, you can't really do that because, like, looking at these sort of, like, even the top 4 here, like, what do you want to bench? And then do you bench your Rain Core to bring, like, some of this? And even so, like, the mons that they're bringing instead are not the strongest. So, moving on, we have... I can't remember whose this team is. I think it's Zero's. I didn't write the name down. So, we're going to call it Zero's team. Because I know we haven't done that team yet. We got the Mega Flygon, the Delta Arcanine, the Celesteela, the Roserade, Rotom Heat, Delta Golurk, Delta Metang Spider, Blastoise, Delta Ivysaur, and T-Tar. So, looking at this team, our speed tiers. Mega Flygon, very fast. Everything else, quite slow. That's a real gripe that I have with this team. Because if I have a mon that is, let's say, at base 110. Say I've got a Gengar. Delta Arcanine is 15 points slower, so that means I can run my modest Gengar versus this team. Yes, Flygon's going to outspeed, but Flygon always outsped me. So it's like anything like that 110 to like 119 can run Adamant or Modest, and it's not really punished unless we have Delta Metang Spider with our Sticky Webs. Which, yes, this mon is very good, but I don't think it's good enough to come every game and be like an actual threat. Looking at our hazards, like, yes, this column is very full. We take away the Delta Metang Spider, and it's T-Tar for Rocks or Roserade for Spikes. So it's another team that's really putting pressure on a mon that's like 4 or 5 points, and it's not the strongest. It kind of has to run Eviolite, which means you lose out on some of its abilities. We'll just flick this open. Like Immunity and Poison Heal. Immunity you still get, but like it loses out on Poison Heal, which is one of the things that makes like Metagross Spider really good. We have decent removal. Mega Flygon's not running Defog, so it's Rotom Heat Blastoise, which are like 2 decent mons. And our pivots are okay, like Rotom Heat Blastoise, Mega Flygon, and Metang. That's the one thing that I think makes Metang a little bit okay to rely on for hazards. It does have U-turn, so it does have a way of getting out and like stopping free setup sort of thing. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, I feel like this team just misses like that speed control a lot because its defensive core isn't the strongest. Looking at this, like we have Celesteela, who's good. A little bit the same thing I'll say about Celesteela I've said about Clefable and all those other like good defensive mons without like outrageous stats is I think they got a little bit worse in Insurgents because of the power creep. And the power creep's evidence in like these first two picks. Like this is a Mega Flygon with 140 special attack, and it has Amplifier. So Boom Bursts, Draken Voice, and whatever other the sound moves are, Bug Buzz, like they just hit harder than most of the things we've seen in standard draft. Looking at like Delta Arcanine, this is like E-Killer Arceus, but in a mon that's allowed in normal format. Like, it's crazy. So same can be said, I think, about Rotom Heat as Celesteela. Like, they're both good, but they're not as strong as they were in regular draft. And when it comes to defensive utility, of course. Like, the other things they do, they're still just as good. Blastoise, and then, like, T-Tar. It's, like, all four of those don't even get reliable recovery. So this team struggles taking hits, I think. It does have decent pivoting, but it's kind of reliant on those top two for damage output, which I'm not a fan of personally. Double Dragon as well as your first two picks, when your Fairy is a like Delta Ivysaur. I personally don't think this is a very strong team. And as someone who has lost to Zero in finals, this is not a Zero quality team. Just looking at this, like our one Rock Resist is Delta Golurk, so Edgequake goes in kind of crazy on this team, like kind of crazy. Our Ghost Immunity is one of our offensive Like in terms of like this side of things, are like resistances, it's not too bad, but it's just a bit lacking from Zero, if I'm honest. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10, just because I don't think it's very strong. And then, yeah, we go on to our last couple of teams. First of all, this is just my team. Gloss over it really quick. I'm not going to rank it. I drafted Darkness. We've got Very Scary Mon. We've got click the Grassy Glide button and then go fast in Darkness with some fillers. Also got the Hurricane Mon for 1 point, which was fun. But we have Ian and his team here. Ian's team is very strange. Ian's team is a little bit strange because we took the G-Darm round 1, which just screams like a Regirock move, because G-Darm is not very good. I don't like it. I think it's kind of bad. And also Coco. With what was on the board, like for example, I took like Rillaboom and Delta. Like Rillaboom went like late round 2. I personally think it's stronger than Coco and Darm as an individual pick. So I just think like in terms of like, let's even go back at like Delta Arcanine made it to 0. Delta D-Knight, if we go back to like some of the stuff like Delta Emolga made it back to S, Delta Mega Medic made it to Ben. Like these were some early, like late round 2 picks as well. So I don't think it's a very strong mon. Delta Mega Blastoise is an interesting one because its ability, I feel like, is it's Mega Launcher. Okay, so it's not Shadow Dance. I thought it was Shadow Dance. It's a bit early for that. I don't think it was quite value for round 3. Delta Milotic, Tangrowth. It's just going through the rest of the team, like Delta Milo, Tangrowth, Swampert, Empoleon, Dragonite, Delta Liepard, Delta Lop, and Delta Glalie. First thing is like first, this is the core of your team, and you drafted like 2 new mons. I just feel like this team, like even looking at its speed tiers, like you take out Delta Liepard and Delta Lopunny, which are real low tier options, it's Coco and then bust in terms of like speed. And it's worse than the last team because it's Galarian Darm is your other speed control, and clicking Protect nerfs this mon into oblivion. So, yeah. I personally don't like this team. It's got good hazard control, though. Like, we have some solid rocks and spikes. Like, Delta Glalie is interesting. Does it get Foundry, or is that only the Mega? It's only the Mega, so that mon just became infinitely worse. D-Knight and Empoleon Coco is good removal, and it does get a nice pivot core. Again, looking at these, like Delta Liepard, Delta Lop, like taking up these last 3 slots, we can kind of ignore because they're just not very good mons. But it's a decent pivoting core. We've got 4 mons in there. And then you've got like Tangrowth, Pert as like a decent core here. Empoleon and Dragonite to take those water attacks. That this, like, it's good, not great. Let's go have a look at our weaknesses and resistances really quick, just to like see any overarching issues. We're really reliant on our Mega and then Empoleon to take psychic attacks. That's not too bad. But other than that, like, again, our Mega is it's like, think normal Mega Blastoise. Like, it hits hard. It comes in sort of like tanks a hit and then just clicks a button. Is what I reckon it does best. And it's also our only Ghost resist. Fairy resists are a little light as well, like it's Empoleon or Delta Glalie, which this mon isn't a resist. So kind of Empoleon to take all the fairy attacks, which our Mega and one of our more important mons on the team doesn't appreciate. So personally, I don't think this is the best team that we've seen. I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. I don't think it's overly strong. So that is, we have now ranked all 17 teams. I won't be ranking my own, of course, because I drafted it. So going back, we will, like, there is a lot of 7s to 7.5s that I've given in here. I will, after this recording, go back, have a look at these teams again, and put them in an order, and then we'll publish that order at the end of the video, or in a slide separate. We shall see. But anyways, if you've made it this far, which probably many people haven't, I will see you all later for my next video whenever I join a league that needs power rankings or whatever. Latest.